Go.
This says Kadosh La Yahweh. This word Kadosh means set apart, sacred, holy. It's the word that the cherubim, the angels around his throne, when they say holy, 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 it says in the scripture they're saying Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So whatever that word might mean is translated holy. But what does holy mean? Well, this isn't a question of what does holy mean. It's a question of what does Kadosh mean. This word can also mean betrothed. So who is betrothed? It's one out of all the other possibilities. So it means set apart, the one and only, the one that's the focus of attention. So this phrase was written on the headband of the high priest. It's translated as saying, holiness unto the Lord. So why would the high priest have on his headband, holiness unto the Lord? You read that in English, and you have to figure out, well, if holy means pure and godlike, what does holiness mean? Is this word holy or is it holiness? Two different things. We were talking about this earlier. Zadik, zadikah. Righteous, righteousness. If this is holiness, shouldn't it say kadashah? But it doesn't say kadashah. This is our letters Q, D, and then SH. And the vowels, if whether it's kadosh or kodesh or kedesh or even kiddush, they're all the same basic word, but with different aspects, like the difference between run, ran, running, swim, swam, swum, swimming, I done swum versus I am swimming, you know. It's all how you decide to see the word in application. But the fundamental basis of Hebrew is what they call the three-letter verb root. In this case, kuf dalet shin. You could stick the letter hey in front of it, so it says the kadosh. And then if you put yod mem as a suffix at the end, it's plural, so it would be pronounced ha-kadashim, and that's translated saints, or set-apart ones, or holy ones. But in Hebrew, it's simply ha-kadashim. But the root of it is this word, set apart. So you think, okay, if this is written on the headband of the high priest, and he's the one special guy out of the entire nation, then really you shouldn't mess with it. Nobody else should have that written on their headband. But then, the next to the last verse in the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, it says this exact same phrase is going to be written on the bells of the horses in Jerusalem. Oh, wait a minute, are these the high priest's horses? What? Does the high priest have any horses? Whose horses? And why are they wearing bells? Is it winter time, like sleigh bells? I heard it said that there's this phrase, I'll be showing up with bells on. You ever heard that phrase? Mm-hmm. You know where it comes from? Anybody? Mm-hmm. Apparently, if somebody was going to have a horse race, as it were, to say, okay, we got 10 miles to cut through the countryside this way and that way, and let's see who can get to the pub first, then the guy who shows up first gets to take the other guy's bells off his horses. That was the wager. So, you know, you just got some guys that are running this thing, and whoever loses has to cough up his bells. It's kind of like kids playing marbles. You know, you play marbles, and whoever wins gets to take all the other kids' marbles. So the phrase, I'll be there with bells on, is to say, hey, I'm gonna get there, and I'm going to be there first, and I'm going to win this thing. It's just this kind of a... Somebody said something about too much testosterone the other day. Be there with bells on, by golly. That's kind of one of those things. But who are these horses that have bells on in Jerusalem? Now, I know that one time in Jerusalem they were going to have this pageant, and so people were riding horses. This was back in 2009, I think. But that was a theatrical presentation, and there was a few horses, not Roman soldiers on the horses or whatever it was. But even today, you generally don't see horses in Jerusalem. So was that a prophecy of a long time ago, or sometime in the future when they'll allow horses again? I mean, they've got pavement and the horses can slip because of those roads are made out of what's called Jerusalem stone. Well, some roads are asphalt, but this Jerusalem stone, man, it is slippery. If you're not wearing the right shoes, man, especially if there's a little pool of water, it's just, man, your feet are gone. It's like being on ice. And I would imagine that even horses' hooves would have a pretty rough time on it. So what does it mean the horses' hooves or the horses' bells in Jerusalem are going to have? How can that prophecy happen? Well, we can say, well, it's just one of those weird things. In some imaginary day in the future, there's going to be horses, and they will have bells on, and somebody's going to write into them the etching, Kadosh LeYahweh. So you look at the words in Hebrew. The word bell is something covering like this. In fact, I believe the word is Betzalel. Betzel is the word for shade or shadow, like an umbrella. In fact, in Spanish, you ever heard of a sombrero? Mm-hmm. Yep. Sombrero, the suffix ero, it has to do with kind of like the, in Hebrew, if you put a vav at the end of the word, it's a masculine suffix, and if you put the hey at the end of the word, it's a feminine suffix. Not necessarily meaning male and female, but this is a grammatical tense. So if you end up with, in Spanish, an A, that's a feminine, O, that's masculine, so sombrero would be this masculine suffix, but what does it mean? What is sombrero? If it ends in an ER, that means it's a verb. Sombrero, have you ever heard that before? You who know, does anybody know Spanish? Shade. It means to give shade. So a sombrero is just something to shade you. So any basically hat with a brim is a sombrero, but we only associate that with the big hats that the Mexicans, they at least used to wear back in the days of the 1800s, 1700s, when now we have air conditioning, so we don't need those. It's a whole different thing. But what I'm saying is, you can look at words and break them down and realize what's going on. And this word sombrero is that which gives shade like a bell. So you might read that the horses are going to be wearing sombreros. That's the prophecy. In Jerusalem, the horses are going to be wearing sombrero hats. A bunch of Spanish people are going to come back and have a big fiesta at Sukkot. Maybe that's the prophecy. Maybe. Well, what's the word horse? The word horse happens to be written as, it's pronounced sus. It's Samic, Vav, Samic. It's our letters S-U-S. As in the English word J-E-S-U-S, Jesus. Some people make the association, not that this is real, but some people make the association that if you say ha, that's pronounced ha, sus, that literally means the horse. And that would be pronounced ha sus. Well, in Spanish, the letter J is pronounced as an H. Jesus is the Spanish name for Jesus. Jesus. So that's kind of like saying the horse. So just to explain, kind of made a joke. Some people take offense and didn't think it's funny, but I said, yes, Jesus is coming back. Or yes, Jesus is going to return up in the sky, and Yeshua is going to be riding him. Well, that's a picture in Revelation. Yeshua's coming back riding the horse, right? The big white horse. We saw some pictures of that. Okay, so some people don't think that's funny. But I'm trying to explain the language. And yes, there was a picture in Revelation of Yeshua coming back riding hasus, riding a horse. It's language. So is the horses in Jerusalem going to be wearing sombrero hats? Well, if the word for bell is that which is covering, you might look at it like, look like this. This is the interior, right? It's a cup, right? A teacup. If you flip it upside down, this being the interior portion here, right? It's a cup turned upside down is the same as the bell, and it means to give shade. So an umbrella is a shade. But look, going back to horse, the word spelled psalmic means a fluttering flag or a fluttering moth. And remember, Hebrew, as Rad was showing us, he showed us a pencil. What is this? It writes. So psalmic Bob psalmic literally is it flutters, it zips around. Cars zip around, and if you see a video that's sped up, they zip around. A lot of times you'll see urbanscapes, city, videos of cities where the cars with their lights are zipping all around, right? Cars are cabs with a set of wheels. And then they have a windshield, a steering wheel. Well, is that a bell of a horse, or is that the cabs of cars? Or is it a horse wearing a hat? If it's really, you put a bumper sticker on the car that says Kadosh La Yahweh, and then you have to say, well, it's in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is Rush, there might be a Vav in there, Rush Shalem Shin Lamed Mem. Sometimes there's a Yod up there. It's spelled a couple different ways. Shalom is where you get the word shalom, which means full and complete and having finally been accomplished. And then Rosh has to do with receiving the inheritance. So Jerusalem means city of peace, but it also means not only to receive an inheritance, but to dispossess and to drive out others and take over that which was promised to you. So the name of the city of Jerusalem has to do with these verses in Jeremiah 30 and 31 and Ezekiel 37, where Yahweh says, there's coming a day when I'm going to take you who I've scattered across the face of the earth and bring you back and give you the inheritance that I promised your forefathers. Hasn't happened yet. We're still scattered amongst the nations. The land that he promised our forefathers, we'd have to break down the particular verse with the particular words. I'm trying to talk a concept. The land, two different words for land is Adamah, and this is the word Adam, which also means red, which also means earth, or as Jim said, soil. And when you see red soil, it's very rich with iron and other minerals. But the other word for land or earth is eretz. And as we said the other day, aleph being the prefix means I will, and rats is where you get the word for rats, R-A-T-S, which also means to run, and it's a course that you run. Like a mailman on a certain route, or a sprinter running 40 yards, or say 440 yards, quarter mile or something. So rats is actually a prescribed course. I'm just showing you one way to read the words. If he says, I'm going to give you back the land that I promised your forefathers, not only can it mean, yes, he will take us back to that land, but if the land that he gives, this word here, dalet mem is the word blood, and I believe the word aleph dalet means vapor. So you could read that man, Adam, is a vapor of blood, or vapor and blood. Breath is vapor. So something about man's intrinsic beingness is breath and blood. That's Adam. And when Yeshua came as the Son of Man, somehow he came in breathing and blood. Life is in the blood. So it's not just this phrase, oh, Son of Man. It's not just a title. There's something else to be dug out of the word. So if he gave us to run the land I promised your forefathers, is not just the soil, but it's the course that they should run. And their inheritance being the peace that he promised, which is Jerusalem, I'm just saying this is where your mind can go. Do you physically have to be in Jerusalem, or can you be of the running the course of the heart that he told our ancestors to, which is where there's this inheritance of peace? That's in his words. It's in believing what he said to be true and taking hold of it with all your strength. And then you look back and say, all your strength, boy, that's like, have these words written upon your doorposts of your house and upon your gates, and you will love him with all your heart, all your soul, with all your strength. We had written on the board it's on the treasure map actually, Vekol lavevka, that's with all your heart. Vekol nafshaka, that's your inner being, your animation, your mind, your will. And then there's this word that's translated strength, which is spelled mem, aleph, dalet. With a kaf, that's the word suffix meaning your. So if this is the word spelled M-A-D, reading that direction, we would spell it as mad. Like madly. Same letters, same word. So that word, when it says with all your strength, it's actually do this madly. Well, that's, Yahweh said he was known as El Kona, Kuf Nun Aleph, pronounced our letters Q-N-A, or we put the vowel in Kona, and that's like the city in Hawaii, Kona. It's the same exact word, and it means jealous and zealous, which is to say passionate, really into this stuff. Yahweh says he was really into this stuff. In other words, in talking with Tiffany and Mike, they spent a lot of time designing this crochet work that's back here. More time was spent designing it than in making it, and that was a lot of time and effort left in making it. Yahuwah himself spent 7 days, you might say, building this planet. How many, well, there was no time, so we don't know, but how much effort and duration of processing did he put in before making this place? Well, he could have just done, poof, poof, it was perfect all of a sudden. That's somebody's theological construction, but if there's no time, poof can be 10 zillion years, equals 1 second. And another, logarithmic, 100 zillion years is the second, and a zillion years is only an hour. And it's like, how long did he spend designing this place? Whatever it was, what he came up with, he calls himself El Kona. That's the name he gives himself. He says, I'm the guy who is completely enthralled by, turned on by, enthusiastic about the stuff that I designed. What he designed, as we've been talking all week, he designed these letters, and he designed the Moedim, and he designed the Sabbath day, he designed this language, and he designed the way that all these words interweave with each other. And as I said, there's this verse, so I can't remember where it is, I'll have to find it, where it seems to say to me that spelling of words is the sport of the heavens. The national sport of Hashemayim, the kingdom of Yahweh, is the spelling of words. And he is the greatest fan of that sport. It's kind of like if somebody sits around and starts spelling words, looking at his stuff in it, he's going to buy the season ticket of the best seat right on the half-yard line, and he's right there with it because, hey, that's his thing. I mean, you can imagine, like we have a chessboard set up, somebody who is just absolutely passionate about chess. If they're walking down through the park and they see a couple guys pull out a chessboard and sit there, it's like, hey, I'm going to go over and sit there with them. Strangers, but I'll sit there with them. It's kind of like Yahweh doing the same thing. Remember he said truth and kindness precede him? So it's like, well, when truth and kindness happen, Yahweh says, hey, what's going on? Sounds like my kind of stuff. And he shows up. Same thing with all this stuff. So the point is, if we were to say, hey, let's put Kadosh Yahweh as a bumper sticker and stick it on our cars, we're proclaiming His stuff. We're proclaiming that we are His betrothed. Kadosh means betrothed to Yahweh, or set apart unto. We have dedicated ourselves to the matters of His regard, which is the Creator, the Torah, the Messiah, the Ruach, leading us into the ways of righteousness. The colors on the priest garments as well as the Mishkan curtains were blue, purple, red, and white linen. I think of blue as being the hand of the Creator, the sky blue, the color of police officers generally, not always. Hay, purple, the royal decrees. Vav, Adam, red, man, the Messiah. And white linen, the Spirit, the Ruach, who leads us into the ways of truth, which is the instructions of the Torah. That's what I see in here. And then gold thread, which he mentioned, was also in the embroidery. So this, like on the headband of the high priest, should be our consciousness. We did a video that's on Mountain Air 7 called Ephraim's Phylactery. So you have Brother Judah does the tefillin and phylactery, right? They have that box on their forehead, and they have the leather that they tie around their hands. That is Yehuda's interpretation of how to do that verse. So that hat that I wear with the alphabet letters on it, what are those alphabet letters? Well, every letter is something that Yahweh made that's about Him, that's about the kingdom, that's about the Messiah, that's about us. So as we contemplate every letter, having it on our mind, having those letters on the hat, it's kind of a joke, but it's not a joke, it's deadly serious. So, being Ephraim, this northern kingdom, the other 10 tribes with all these different character attributes and cultural things that don't have to match Yehuda, they can be similar. Remember that verse? Hey, there's another guy wearing tzitzit. Let's walk up to him and say, Shemanu Elohim Amkam. Let's walk together, because Shemanu, we hear, we pay regard to Elohim with you, in league with you, just like you do. So hey, let's walk together for a while. Shemanu Elohim Amkam. That's what the verse says, but it's translated differently. So as we take it upon ourselves, the burden with serious regard, we better be right, to look at these words and translate them, and all of a sudden realize that none of the English translations that we have been given are necessarily accurate or complete. Where do we find the complete inheritance? First of all, we have to take on the attitude, the mind, and dedicate our lives. Dedicated unto Yahweh. That's another way to read it. So, if any of you didn't get these bumper stickers, they're available. I think everybody got them, but if not, feel free. But you better not put this on unless you're willing to have Yahweh say, when you step out of line, He's going to correct you, and it's a very serious business. Remember, He wiped out thousands of His own people because they stepped out of line and mispresented His name. When you take this name on yourself, there's nothing more serious, and you're actually inviting Yahweh's scrutiny for severe correction, but also severe blessing. That's the nature of the inheritance. In these words, this is just an example of how you pick things apart. The title of this was, If you had only grabbed a hold of my Musi. Now how do you do that? How would you do that? How would you grab that? I'm quoting from Scripture there. It's Isaiah 27:5, which we'll look up. How would you do that? How, if Yahweh said, if you'd only grabbed a hold of my Musi.
I'm thinking of the big animal and trying to grab a hold of calling it like a childish name.
Okay.
Like my Musi.
Which part of that animal would you grab?
The whole. Oh, well, I would hope I'd try to rope his horns first, but.
What if you grabbed hold of his tail and they started running? He pulled you through. It'd be like water skiing. These guys run through the marsh.
Right.
If you grab a hold of his antlers, he might just throw you like a.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you grab his neck? Well, if he was nice and friendly, but these are wild animals.
Yeah.
Okay, Let me show you something. The same way that I said Jesus, Jesus, in Greek, if it was Jesus, this letter J didn't exist until about 400 years ago. So even in the original King James, it would be Yesu. But Greek phonetics, masculine singular, like Spanish, sombrero, you put the O. Hebrew, you put the vav, ending in a U. But in Greek, masculine singular, they stick an S. So it's Jesus. That became Jesus. But that's a blend of Greek and English and Hebrew, horse. But not Yeshua, but Greeks didn't speak with an SH sound, only the S. So the SH of Yeshua, instead of because that's the feminine suffix, the sounds like in Spanish, so they had to change it to an S. So what you get is a complete perverting of the written placement of the letters. So I'm doing the same thing with Musi. I'll show you that. Here, I'm going to erase this. Does somebody want to read Isaiah 27:5?
I'll find it.
Okay.
Okay, Isaiah 27:5 says, "For let him take hold of my strength and make peace with me. Let him make peace with me."
Let him grab hold of my strength. Okay, read a couple verses before that.
Verse 3. I, Yah, do guard it. I water it every moment, lest any hurt it. I guard it night and day. Wrath is not in me. Who would set thorn bushes and weeds against me in battle? I would go through them. I would burn them together.
Okay, when he says it, go back to another verse. What is he talking about it? I'm trying to show you something here. If I bring up one word, muzi, now I'm showing you have to look at the verse. And because the verse is referencing something else, you got to go before it until you find what the it is that he's talking about. And as he's referring to what his actions are, we can look at those words too. So what I'm trying to show you by doing this, right? We talked all week talking about that there's a reason for doing this, and there's a method for doing this, and I'm trying to show you a particular benefit by, within a little half an hour space here, of how to do this, and then show you the payoff of what you get. So if I'm saying that there's this hidden treasure, this is just one little nugget, or this is one little jewel, one little gem of the hidden treasure that I found in this verse. And so I'm trying to show you kind of the step-by-step process so that you can do the same thing, right? Now there's some people, like I say, there's this one friend I have, his Bible doesn't even contain the Old Testament. So this verse is completely beyond his experience. Other people only read the parashah quickly, just for what it's worth. There's some people read what's called a triennial cycle, which means they take 3 years to read the parashah. So instead of being on a pretty fast clip of, we need to read a certain number of chapters, blah, 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 boom, 52, now we start over, blah, 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 52, now start over. They slow down by 1/3, which gives them time to process. And if somebody wants to be on that triennial cycle, you could probably find it on the internet and to go along with the readings. Just saying, it's not like, oh, you become Torah-minded, now you got to read the parashah every week. If you read the parashah every week, they also have these secondary writings that are in the books of the prophets, and then other people have the New Testament readings. Are those mandatory? Nothing's mandatory. Nothing is mandatory. This is all what you want to put into it in order to get something out of it. There's nothing mandatory except Yahweh said at Sukkot, once every 7 years, read this Torah. Was he talking about the first 5 books, or was he talking about just the book of Deuteronomy? Or was he just talking about the Ten Commandments and really go over it slowly? Find the group you enjoy collaborating mentally with their interpretation and hang out with them for a while until you get a different frame of mind. Then hang out with another group. Nothing is mandatory about this study, just so you know. And if you've never read the whole scripture, try reading it from Genesis all the way through to Revelation, just to get an overview. That's a great place to start. Just like the alphabet. It's a catch-22. You won't understand the whole thing until you understand each little piece. But you won't understand each little piece until you understand the whole thing. So you have to start somewhere. So the class I did in 2011, each week was one letter. So you watch it one time and you go, this letter. Okay, got it. Do you understand the whole thing? No. Second letter. Oh, I see it in relationship to that letter, but you don't understand the whole thing? No. It's not until you get to the whole end of the class where you've got all 22 letters and you go, oh, now I got the whole thing, but what was that? So you got to go back and watch it again. Now you can watch it again in the context of knowing that there's individual pieces and the whole thing. Now you can watch it with a whole different frame of mind. And when some people have asked, well, how do I start learning Hebrew? I would suggest that's a place to start. Yeah, the class, I did it, okay, so what? It's not about that. It's about getting the information. And it's free. Just watch it. It's on YouTube. It's free. You can watch the whole thing. It's not a matter of like, gee, am I trying to earn a buck from it? It's just, I'm trying to present an easy way to comprehend. Okay, so if you back up, and let's locate what is the subject that Yahweh is addressing. What verse do you come to?
Verse 2.
Okay, what does that say?
It says, in that day sing to her a vineyard of red wine.
In that day sing to her. Now this is the lyrics of what you're supposed to sing. Oh, so you can say, oh, well, this is just poetry. It happened a long time ago. Or maybe it hasn't happened yet. In that day. Okay, now we got to back up again to find out what day he's talking about. We're not going to do that. But what I'm saying, if you really want to get the context of what's happening, you've got to back up. You can't even start there. I'll tell you what he says. He was talking about people looking at Israel, the land, and saying, this place is a rotten, stinking desert. It's ruined. It's devastated. Everybody hates the place. It's full of thorns and thistles and wild animals and hoodlums and barbarians who wants to kill you and cut your throat as much as look at you. Yeah, geez, it kind of sounds like today. So when I went there, somebody bought me a ticket to go there. 2 different occasions. Thank you very much. The thing about it is you look at that and say, this is just barren wasteland. Yes, some people have grown some things, and yes, it has an agriculture of selling food to Europe, and the land has potential. But you look at it now, especially in Jerusalem, you take a bus and you go up to the top of the hill and you look out as far as you can see, it looks like the desert of Arizona or California. Nothing. Barren wasteland. And we read that he is going to turn this into the Garden of Eden as a comparison. It hasn't happened. Oh, some people say that's the new heavens and the new earth. He's going to destroy this earth with fire, and then he's going to build a new earth, and that one's going to be what... That's not what it says. Reading this, he first said, this place is so horrible that even the Gentiles were saying, when somebody says, why in the world did the God of this land destroy this land so that it's just wrecked? And the Gentiles will say, the Elohim of Israel, that he made a covenant with them, his own people betrayed him, acted treacherously, defiling this land with their behavior. And he defines it, lying, stealing, and killing. That's his people's tendency. And because they did that, he kicked them out and called in the Piratzim, the pirates, his same Hebrew word, to devastate and ruin, and it lies ruined to this day. And then he says, in that day, the day of the recovery, he didn't say there, I'm going to make a new heavens, burn this thing up like a piece of charcoal and shoot it off into some black hole where it gets dissolved into atoms of nothingness, and then I'm going to bring in this whole new thing. He's talking about this planet, this place. And the people will then say of it, instead of a rotten, stinking wasteland desert, they're going to say, whew, this is a vineyard of luscious wine. And then, what else do they say?
let's see, verse 1 in chapter 27. In that day, Yah, with his severe sword, great and strong, punishes, I don't know how to say this word, but Liwiat.
Let me see that. I can't follow you. Leviathan. In that day, Yahweh with his severe sword, great and strong, punishes Leviathan. Okay, this is talking about some day where Yahweh's going to come in as some kind of warrior with a sword, and he's now going to be fighting against some concept or creature or beast. Or is it the devil? Or is it the Antichrist? What's he going to do?
Leviathan, the fleeing serpent. Leviathan, that twisted serpent. And he shall kill the